Hello, welcome to OLA 2020. This session is titled Open Educational Resources. My name is Casey Lowry. I am a member of the University and College Division of OLA, and I've got a panel of 5 speakers here with me. We've got Kathy S. Miller, Amy Laggers, Jamie Holmes, Veronica McGowan, and Marla Lobley. And I'm going to let Marla introduce the group, and we're going to kick off our conversation about OERs. Marla?
Thanks, Casey. So we have a representation here of people from different institutions. Kathy is at OSU, which of course is a very large institution and has an established OER program, and she is the OER librarian for OSU. And then Jamie and Amy are from Tulsa Community College, which is another large institution with an established OER program. But instead of one dedicated position, they have a OER committee. And so that changes some of how they do things. And Veronica McGowan and I are from regional universities. I'm at ECU and Veronica is at SWASU. And so we are kind of just beginning our OER efforts and have been trying to establish those in any way we can without having a dedicated role or committee to do that. So you're going to hear a variety of perspectives, and hopefully there's one that you can adopt at your institution. So I think we can go ahead and get started. I will share my screen. We're going to go over just some top things that we would like to share with you, and then Casey's going to have some questions for us. So here is our contact information. We will show this slide again at the end. So for making a plan for OER, I believe that, let's start with Kathy. I've seen her give a few presentations about making a plan for OER. So let's go ahead and start with you and what you have to give us on this topic.
All right, well, thank you very much, Marla, for the chance to share what we've experienced. So we started out with some projects. We had a donor who came and provided some money, and we had a librarian who was very interested in improving the learning experience for first-year students in particular, and with regards to affordability. And so we we partnered with some faculty to create some OER using the money from the private donor. And building on the success of that, we decided we wanted to transition from just a series of projects to a program. So the university hired me as the OER librarian, and we've developed, or are in the process of developing, a mission and vision associated with OER. And in order to do it, we're tying it very tightly to the university mission and vision. And we implemented a human performance technology analysis, which in, I guess, library world would be similar to an environmental scan, saying where we are, where we wish we would be, and how to get there. And that's a little bit, I guess. So as far as mission and vision, did you want me to go into more detail, Marla, or is that a good start on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. Just how important it is to tie the mission and vision of your OER goals to the institutional goals.
Right.
At ECU, one of the first kind of hurdles we've had to jump over is, are we going to focus on OER specifically, which, if you're not familiar, that is materials that is openly licensed, and so you can actually own a copy of it and remix it and redistribute it. And there's something called the 5 R's that a lot of people use as a definition of OER. Or are we going to focus on affordable educational resources, or AER, which means journal articles that the library provides, but they're not openly licensed because you can't retain a copy. You have to pay for the subscription every year, and that's what gives you access. So we've had a lot of confusion among our faculty when we're talking to them about replacing a textbook, and they're like, oh, well, I can just use library journal articles. And so we've kind of had this internal debate of, is our goal to go truly open, or is our goal to make things more affordable for students? And so that's something that I would want to clarify earlier in the process if I was to do this over again. And I think for the librarian's role, Kathy, did you have some comments on that?
I do, and I think that probably others on the panel will be able to amplify what I share, but we, as I partner with faculty and instructors creating OER or looking to redesign their course syllabi to use only affordable resources, as I enter into it, I kind of in that first like reference type interview try to determine what role they expect me to play, and we kind of clearly establish what role. Am I an organizer? Am I helping locate resources? Am I helping identify resources? Am I advising them on the pedagogy? Am I the counselor guiding them through? And so kind of aligning with, is it Kulthau, is that how you say the name? Kind of the roles of librarians as far as a reference interaction are concerned, and kind of align as much as possible with the skills and roles with which we're already familiar, rather than creating a whole new process. How to identify what we already do well and kind of lay that over the OER workflow. But I think others can probably speak to that more, or in a more articulate manner.
The librarian's role is going to be sprinkled throughout our presentation, so you might hear more on that. Amy, do you have anything to talk about how TCC is going about making a strategic plan for OER?
Sure. I wanted, a lot of what we've already done kind of echoes what you guys have already talked about. So the first thing that we had to do was identify and articulate what the librarian's role was going to be. And we have that displayed prominently on our LibGuide and in all of our communication with faculty about OER. We're here to collaborate with faculty. We're not the subject area expert, and we always defer to the subject area experts for that. But we do collaborate with faculty to locate, evaluate, and curate OER resources. And we've also included those alternative affordable educational resources.
Yeah.
We have that articulated in our librarian's role as well. We know we have some really great resources in the library that students are already paying for in their fees, and so we're really kind of looking at the OER movement at TCC as low cost, no cost to the student, and we put that in our librarian's role. As far as a strategic plan for OER, we kind of have a plan for the library as far as OER, but we are support for faculty at TCC. We're not driving the car. And so a lot of what our role at TCC has been is finding those pockets where it's already happening. We already had a faculty member that was very involved with getting OpenStax adopted at TCC, and she was doing a lot of work there. We had other faculty dipping their toes in and using OER, and they needed some support. And then we kind of got a top-down initiative too, because our administration wanted a set of courses that would get students through their core classes. We're calling them E-core. They're going to be online courses that, well, if you take this suite of courses, will get you through all of your required, your comp and your history and all of that. And so they wanted those courses to be developed using OER. So we were very excited in the library to be able to have a librarian on each one of those teams. So we have our subject area experts and our librarian and our instructional designer. It was a really good opportunity for us to kind of get the word out. I think, and Jamie will probably agree, that we've been able to make other contacts with faculty members that maybe were just curious, because this E-core movement at TCC has gotten the word out about the way the library can help to move, to support faculty in that role of getting the materials. So really what I was saying is our strategic plan for the library has really been to just kind of unite what is going on in different parts of the college and places where it's already happening and just solidify it.
Yeah, I know at ECU, when I first started talking to faculty about OER, they're like, oh, I've been using that for years, but they didn't know it was called OER. And so that's kind of another hurdle, is uniting those silos and helping people understand what OER is, and then seeing where they may already be doing that and how can we combine that into a unified effort. Does anyone else have comments about making a plan, either things that have worked for you or things that you've has been a challenge at your institution?
I'll speak a little bit. Our institution, most of our OER activity has come organically from faculty that are been interested in it. Some of them actually don't even realize they're doing OER. For example, we have a lot of nursing faculty that use a lot of freely available resources from the CDC. So if you ask them, are you using OER? They'll say, oh, no, we're not. But actually, they're using quite a bit of it. So sometimes even just that using the common language is a barrier. But our institution has realized that if we want to foster more OER opportunities, we need to at least have support structures in place so that those opportunities can in fact grow, and that we can participate in other activities like state level funding. So we had a committee that was an ad hoc committee that explored the concept of OER, and unfortunately, due to competing interests, if this isn't some of the administrations that their interest, it kind of loses steam a little bit. But we have at least put in place, we have a dedicated librarian who supports OER efforts, and we have ourselves prepared so that if we wanted to participate, say, in a state funding opportunity, we can. So we have found it was important to at least have that committee that was able to speak to that.
All right, I think that's a good segue to our next slide of implementation, and how once you move from that plan to actually doing the work. So let's talk for a minute about what personnel that you have devoted to OER. Veronica mentioned having a librarian with OER as part of their job duties. We don't have that yet at ECU. We've kind of just, all of our liaisons have taken on learning and teaching faculty about OER. So let's start with Kathy. Your dedicated OER position, what's the importance of that to implementing OER on your campus?
Thanks, Marla. Yeah, I was hired in October, maybe a year and a half ago. I'm not sure, in the before times, most definitely. But the library identified OER as part of their future strategic plan and felt like as part of that, they needed to have a position full-time dedicated to OER. I am also the music and theater liaison, but our librarianship model is functional librarianship rather than reference librarianship. So that's how they're able to kind of fit it into that. And we feel that that provides a point person on campus for people who are exploring OER to go to. Not that I know everything at all, but it at least points everybody in the same direction and kind of gets rid of some of those silos and that fragmentation that Amy had alluded to, which we also discovered was taking place. And we've also, as I've attended other presentations, heard it pointed out that it's helpful to have OER in someone's title or job description somehow, so that when people are Googling or searching for the OER specialist on your campus, that person surfaces. And I experienced it recently. My daughter brought me, someone on Facebook had posted looking for OER in a certain subject area, and it wasn't at our institution. It wasn't one of our faculty, but I was kind of trying to find some stuff for this faculty member, but also connect them with the OER community at their institution. And when I got on the website and just searched and searched and searched, I couldn't find the person to point to. And yet I knew that this was an institution active in OER spaces. So I felt like that really surfaced the value of at least having OER in someone's job title somewhere on campus.
Yes, that's a great point, Kathy.
And it also, I guess I should have also piggybacked when Veronica mentioned having support structures in place. That's been valuable also to be able to say that we have taken the initiative to provide that aspect of the support structure as we look out to find more resources and funding and strengthen partnerships.
All right. So Jamie, would you like to talk about the committee model at TCC and how you implement OER?
Sure, absolutely. Ours came about somewhat organically as well. And as Amy mentioned, we had one librarian who was working with a faculty member who was the early adopter. We were an OpenStax partner college or partner institution back, I believe, in 2015, 16, or maybe the year before that. In any case, so she was working at one campus with a faculty member. At the same time, I was involved in the early efforts of COLE and the OER subgroup that had come from the Online Learning Task Force. So I wasn't necessarily involved with a specific faculty member, but I was involved more in the external partnerships and partnerships with the state. And then, as Amy mentioned also, the administration decided that we were going to develop these courses, this core of gen eds, to be delivered online, and they wanted it to be as zero cost as possible, outside of tuition and fees. And so that's sort of, so we sort of had like something going on over here, something going on over here, and then the top down kind of said, hey, we're going to do this, and we need librarians to help with resources. And so it all kind of came together, and our team was formed, organically in that way. The OpenStax librarian had become a director of one of our campus libraries in the meantime, and so she's our director liaison. And then basically all the librarians who raised their hand and said, hey, we want to help with finding resources for eCore, we sort of morphed into the OER library team. And so at TCC, we also have a liaison model. It's somewhat loose in that its primary purpose is communication, so that we have communication from the library to a department coming kind of from the same person. Also that idea of a new faculty member, maybe in a particular department, knowing who to go to in the library for help or instruction or whatever they need. So it's primarily a communication liaison model. But we've got functional specialists as well. So we've got our archivist and our records management librarian, and we've got our interlibrary loan librarian. And so we OER team members have that functional specialty added to our names on our site, on our website, in a variety of places. So what we've tried to do with our model is multiple access points for faculty. So you can reach out to your subject liaison if you choose. You can reach out to a librarian that you're familiar with at your campus. You can reach out to one of the OER team members. And ultimately, the OER team, we've taken the Creative Commons training, so we do have a deeper understanding of OER and the licensing and how it all works. And we provide support not only then for faculty, but for our colleagues. So if, say, our history librarian gets a question, she'll field it to the degree that she feels comfortable doing so. And then if necessary, she'll reach out to one of the OER librarians and say, hey, I need a little bit of reinforcement, or can you confirm this is correct, or can you help me find this or explain this or whatever. So it really is team. We have an OER team, and then we have a librarian team that we hold up, and all of us then are holding up and supporting our faculty who are wanting to delve further into this. Amy, did I do a pretty good job of explaining that? If not, please feel free to ping in.
You did a beautiful job, Jamie. I will add, though, that we also include our copyright librarian on our team, because we've learned how hand in hand these questions tend to be. And so in just the past year, we've added our access services librarian, who serves as the point person for the copyright questions for the college. And she's not the copyright officer, that's our dean, but she does field those first line questions. So having her on the team and having her perspective with copyright, and all of us having the Creative Commons licensing training, has really been helpful.
And I'm going to go ahead and snag that, Jamie, how your multiple access points for faculty. I loved your description of that. And I felt like what you described gives me a way to intentionally incorporate that into our support structure.
Okay, well, hey,
yeah.
That phrase is CC licensed, but I cannot take credit. The attribution would go to my colleague, Amy.
Well done. I'm going to jot that down. Thank you.
Veronica, you also do a committee structure at SWOSU, don't you?
I would actually consider it more of the working group structure, because our committee was an ad hoc committee and its purpose was to explore the feasibility of implementing OER at SWOSU. And the committee did found it was feasible, but in fact, tying into what our next thing is, I think for somebody like the provost, he wants to see performance metrics like, okay, how am I going to be able to market this and say, okay, our students are paying this many less dollars by, coming to SWOSU because we have OER implemented, or that kind of thing. And I appreciate that need he has, because if he's going to invest in setting up OER structures, he needs to fully implement OER. Some instructors will partially implement it, that kind of thing. So I appreciate that need he has to have some kind of metrics to point to. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest barriers between us moving from a working group to a committee is perhaps we haven't been able to demonstrate that the commitment we put in OER in terms of, say, funding faculty's development of OER would in fact pay off in X number of students paying less money.
Veronica, I'm glad you mentioned that the trade-off with OER is that instead of passing the cost on to the students, the cost usually goes to the institution, and so it takes some work to get that mindset into and get that approved. So that can be helpful to have a working group or a committee of multiple people doing that. So it's good to hear from everyone on the advantages and disadvantages maybe of having one person dedicated to OER versus having a committee and the multiple access points for faculty. And so some things to keep in mind for you if you are thinking about implementing OER at your university or in your library. So how do you guys measure success with OER?
That's where the groundwork we did early on when we were intentionally transitioning from projects to a program to align what we were doing with the university mission and vision have really come into play, because we're able to articulate our successes and celebrate the things that happen in relation to the mission and vision statement. So we do, to a certain extent, use the finance metric, right? Because everybody, that's the dollars are a big deal. But we also, as part of our university mission statement, speak to providing community access to knowledge curation opportunities, as well as addressing social justice issues. And OER facilitates each of those things, so that tying it to our mission and vision statement gives us a broad swath of ways to celebrate and measure things that have happened in a positive way. For instance, I have several resources that have been created now on our Pressbooks platform that are being used by programs to give students access to the scholarly conversation. So I'm able to point to that and say, look, we're giving a variety of voices knowledge curation opportunities. And so that gives me a chance to kind of measure and speak to performance metrics in ways other than just strictly financial.
So, go ahead, Jamie.
I also
Kathy.
I also keep very detailed records of conversations and consultations. So if, for instance, a recent mini grant that we ran that awarded $750 to 20 faculty to flip their courses to no-cost materials. As a result of that grant, we got the 20 courses flipped, but in addition to that, I had consults with probably 50 additional faculty members, and so I tracked that. And then when we provided our stewardship report regarding that mini grant, we were able to say not only did we achieve this actual goal, but these are some of the side benefits. I have 50 conversations that would not have taken place without that. So keeping track of all those little bitty things is important and valuable, because then you're able to point to those small victories, and they build up.
At ECU, we track every time, well, we track all of our reference queries, but if it is an OER query, we have a specific label for that, and so we can go back and pull up how many OER have we helped faculty find. And this semester, well, this year it was over 200 for 5 librarians. So that was an impressive number to be able to share with our administration and to help them understand that the library is really at the core of this work, and it would be much more difficult to faculty to take on the burden of transferring to OER without the librarian support. Okay, well, we will move on to collaboration. So as we've said many times, the librarians are usually just in a supporting role for implementing OER. We're not the subject experts. We can't make the final transition. We can't redo the course for the faculty. So how have we worked with faculty to support them? I think, Amy, do you have any comments on faculty training?
Yes, our OER team has been very fortunate to be able to offer, we call them OER 101 sessions at our professional development days at TCC. We have a just an internal conference where it's faculty gets to share what they're doing in the classroom. We have that every spring, and for the past 2 years we've been able to offer our OER 101 there as well. And this last spring, we actually got 2 sessions. We got to do an OER 201. So people that were just interested, had some questions, needed to figure out what the lay of the land was, they attend the 101. And then after they become a little bit more familiar with what OER is and what it's about, and they really want to know, how can I move forward with this and make it a little easier on myself, they can go to the 201. But those sessions have been well attended and well received, and we have all of our materials from our sessions up on our LibGuide and available for reference to look at after the fact. So
Amy, I had to tune out for a second because we had a dog issue, but so you said they were sessions, OER? Yeah. Cool. And will you put those in the Wakelet? I want all of this stuff.
It's on our LibGuide, and our LibGuide on the Wakelet. So
awesome.
Yeah. And we have CC licensed everything that we have for our sessions. So yes.
The beauty of OER is you don't have to reinvent all this stuff. It's just there and wonderful, and you can modify it and change it to what you want. It's so exciting. It's like a librarian's dream, really.
It really is.
So training is a huge part of the support we can provide for faculty. There's also, librarians are sometimes at the center of providing incentives for faculty, and making sure that they get the recognition and the incentives for this hard work that they do when they adopt an OER. So let's talk a little bit about recognition, if anyone has comments about that, and then we'll go on to a couple of other incentive models.
I think my name is by that, so I'll jump in. We've run a couple of grant programs. One was a full, pretty good-sized grant that funded creation of full textbooks, and then the other one was the small-scale Hack Your Syllabus mini grant, which just provided small-scale financial support, but then instructional design support, and that's ended up being the most significant part, probably, for flipping the syllabus. We don't have like an OER Champions or OER Heroes program per se, although lots of super visible, successful programs have those. We're wrestling with, again, some of the social justice issues surrounding that, and like the hidden labor that comes with serving as an OER champion, and also, what goes into being called an OER champion, and are these people that already have a privileged position, privileged access to the conversation. So we try to kind of make the work of our faculty and instructors visible in less formal ways, giving them the opportunity to present, mostly talking to each other, having breakfast where they come together and they get to know each other. But I welcome models that I see at other universities for how they're able to provide that recognition in a meaningful way that doesn't, continue to replicate systems of power that are in place. We do also, as far as incentives, oh, well, this isn't on that, but so that we had the financial incentive, but we also, when we purchased Pressbooks, considered that an incentive because we, for free, provide a platform that they can use to create their resources in, and that's actually assisted a couple of our professors in receiving grants that they'd applied for. So we've got systems of support in place that assist them as they look for financial incentives from other organizations.
Okay, that's a great note, and not something I see a lot when I'm researching faculty incentives, is that ability to provide a platform that lets them search for funding on their own. At ECU, we kind of had a surprise grant-funded initiative or incentive. There was a Title III grant that was already awarded to ECU, and part of it was to do a retention project each year. And last year, it was the last year of funding for the grant, and they didn't have a specific retention project planned. And so one person on our OER working group said, hey, I think we could do this as a retention project, and we can provide funding to faculty to adopt OER. So what we did was, part of the retention project was that it needed to include a study of the effect of the OER adoption or whatever the project was. So we did a call for faculty. We got 24 faculty, and then we split them up into 2 cohorts. So 12 faculty each semester the library was working with to train them on OER, what it was, what Creative Commons is, and find their OER. And then they would adopt that OER for one module of their course so that they could study it in comparison to other modules. That way they're not worried about all the confounds when you try to study 2 different courses and the different demographics in those courses and that kind of thing. And it was very bite-sized for faculty to just find OER for one module. And so then in that study, we've had the results of one study already. And there was a survey that we used that the faculty could use in their course as their study if they liked. And so that way we would have some universal data for ECU. And then in the first round of that survey, 73% of the students said that the OER for that module was average or above average or excellent. And so hopefully that will motivate faculty to continue adopting OER module by module. Veronica, I see you're unmuted. Did you have anything to say?
Well, at SWOSU, what we were considering was a tiered model. For faculty, they would get different levels of support if they just adopted existing OER resources, if they adapted it to either make the resource more timely or to reflect their particular area, or if they actually created it. And we wanted to support all of those, so we had a range of faculty that were participating in OER. And in addition, we were considering, in terms of the faculty incentives, we wanted to incentivize faculty that were in GE courses, because that would reach a higher number of students. And then you would also have to coordinate, presumably, with other sections that were teaching that, that particular course. So we were looking to really reach the whole range of faculty.
And if you research, there's a lot of information out there about providing faculty incentives. And then there are some institutions that have done the math on how many hours does it take to adopt an OER versus create an OER, and they kind of provide a tiered model for that, like Veronica was talking about. Jamie, what does TCC
I would say
do?
at TCC, the biggest faculty incentive throughout our whole experience with it has been release time. So support and funding in the time sense rather than the financial sense. And that goes all the way back to, I think the very first OER truly created by our faculty was for our academic strategies class. And I believe it was 2013-14, although I apologize, I wrote it somewhere and I can't find now where I wrote it. But a group of faculty applied for a FIG, which faculty incentive grant. And so it was a release time to gather together content. And we built that book on our LibGuides platform. We looked around at what was available, and that was available at the time, and it worked well, and it was used for several years. We revised it, I think 2 or 3, maybe even 4 times. And then it sort of morphed into a secondary resource. And now I understand from our OER liaison director, Lisa, that they're not using it at all anymore. They've just moved to a different, it's a seminar format now, not a course. And so it's not being used, but it had been, and that was the very earliest. And then of course the eCore is release time. And one of the things that they are doing is, if they're not creating the OER, they're at least curating it in order to support the objectives for those core courses. So, and then a book that I helped a faculty member edit and put out this spring, she applied for through her dean, basically said this, we have this many sections, where students spend this much money on the book. Most of us only use a handful of chapters from it. We need something better. In philosophy, there's tons out there in the public domain. So she said, surely I can put something together that will save our students money. And so that she got some release time this spring to work on that. So that has worked probably the best at TCC so far. That's been quite successful, because now we've got an English professor who's fully on board, thanks to his work with Amy on eCore. He wants all of his courses to be fully OER as soon as possible. So some of them catch the bug and they get really motivated to do more. So it's fun to watch.
So Jamie, how do you secure that release time for the faculty? Do you have to work with the department head, or what does that look like?
Well, that's way above my pay grade, Kathy, but.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm
that's
just kidding.
I'm wondering,
I mean,
where does that come in?
As I said, eCore was the top-down academic affairs, basically conceived of that project and determined how that would look and how that would go. In the case with Dr. Wilburn and the philosophy, she just basically applied through her own dean and was granted that. There were some stipulations she had to produce by a certain date. I mean, it wasn't just like, oh yeah, go ahead, take 3 hours off every week, we're good. There were obviously something tangible had to be produced at the end. But honestly, I couldn't speak to it any more than that, because my particular work was FIG way back in 13-14, and then with the eCore, and then so there's not a formal structure in place as far as I know. Amy, I could be wrong if you know more on that than I do, but
I don't think there is. However, I will say that TCC has just adopted a new set of mission and vision statement and institutional goals, and one of them is quality education is affordable. So I think that OER is really supporting that belief, that goal. And so there's support from above our heads for this. So I'm glad that Dr. Wilburn was able to ask for it and get it. And so maybe more of that will happen. I don't know.
That's fantastic. What about course catalog notation? I've seen that a lot. I know it can be kind of a beast. We've been trying to figure out how to make that happen at ECU, but can anyone speak to that?
Well, we thought we were pretty close to it happening actually at TCC. The word was there would be an NCLC, so no cost, low cost, 4-character denotation in the course catalog, and it's been tabled, is what we've been told. I think that there are a couple of things at play. We're having some major changes in our academic affairs leadership. Also with the COVID crisis, they had to come up with a 4th course type designation in Banner, so they're calling it online live. And that's where you don't ever go to campus, but you are expected to meet online at a particular time. So they were grappling with how to put that course designation in Banner. I think it was almost like too much at the same time, and this fell by the wayside. We are confident that it is still going to be a deal at TCC. It's just, we were hoping it would be in place for fall, and it isn't.
Yeah, and I've asked questions about how to get that implemented at OSU and just have not had a lot of traction yet. I think we need to see it happening someplace else. But Michelle Reed and UTA have recently created a book, published a book in Pressbooks that I think gives a detailed account of how to do this also, and we'll maybe make sure that's in the Wakelet. But I'd love to hear more, Jamie, too, about how you messaged it and got through to your people.
At ECU, we have people on board with it. Our main struggle is helping faculty make sure they actually are using an OER or that they really understand what that is. So we need some kind of, what we're thinking now is that we're going to make a faculty training course in Blackboard with a badge. And once you have that badge, or maybe it's a series of badges, then you can, if you make a course that is fully OER, then you can get that course catalog notation. So you're kind of incentivized to do the training in order to get that notation in your catalog. Now we have not put that into practice yet, so I'm sure there will be snags that come up that I've read about other places that try to do that, and their faculty get upset because maybe OER isn't suited for their discipline or their course, and they feel like it doesn't lead to an even playing field. They're at a disadvantage for students wanting to take their course because it's not OER through no fault of their own. But there's a lot to work out there, but it can be very helpful for students and a motivator and incentive for faculty. So our last topic before we get to some questions are open ethics. And when you really get into OER and open pedagogy and open education, there's a whole different ethic that goes with it. So let's talk about that a little bit. And let's start with integrating open practice into your own work. Amy, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. We already demonstrated that by our talk earlier about our session materials, but we are really making a push for the things that the library creates for us to try to license them Creative Commons. There are different levels of understanding among our librarians as to exactly how to do that and how to make that work and what they all mean, but we've been having that conversation not just with our library OER team, but with all of the librarians. Let's set an example for faculty and students, and let's go ahead and license the things that we've created, so whether that's a handout that we give students in one of our one-shot sessions or a conference that we go to and the PowerPoint that we use there, just really trying to be very purposeful to set that example and hold ourselves accountable to that. Because why would we ask others to do that if we're not willing to do it ourselves, is kind of the thought there. So.
All right, thank you. Another big part of open practice is collaboration and having lots of partners, and usually even external partners. So I want to talk about one external partner that is available to you at your Oklahoma institution, and that is the COLE OER subgroup. Jamie mentioned it earlier. It's a group started by the Oklahoma State Regents for Higher Education, and COLE stands for Council of Online Learning Excellence, I think. And there's an OER subgroup, and Veronica and Jamie were the co-chairs the last few years, and then Kathy and I are the co-chairs this year. And we're working on creating a space for Oklahoma faculty and librarians to collaborate on OER. And so we're hoping to facilitate a place where you can get external partners from other universities and we're trying to build the OER community in Oklahoma, basically by uniting those silos, uniting those pockets where it's already happening, and providing a space for that to happen all together. Kathy, would you like to talk about some of the unintended consequences of mandates and how that affects privacy?
Right. So we, and this happily at this point, they're not consequences that we've directly experienced that we know of ourselves, but as I've attended other conferences, they've spoken of mandates. I think, I don't know, Louisiana, maybe Hawaii, some mandates that came down and were legislated really without being properly attended to by people that understood the OER space, that resulted in kind of indirect harm. It gives, I'm trying to figure out, I'm trying to be euphemistic, but be careful. We've discovered we need to be careful with the language that we use to make sure that it is in line with our mission and vision and cannot be and absconded with is the only phrase that's coming to mind, and I do not like it. So run that through your own filter and get something more mild. But so, oh, repurposed. So it can't be repurposed by an entity that has mission and values that are really in conflict with ours. Our end goal is the success of our students and our communities. Other institutions, other entities might have an end goal that service to shareholders or something like that. So we try to be very cautious before we mandate anything that it is in line with our mission and vision. And then of course, libraries and their commitment to privacy. We would love to turn on learning analytics on our Pressbook site that are very granular so that we can go back to the provost and say, look how well we're using it. But as we dig more into some of the harm that can be done with those learning analytics, so far we've pumped the brakes on that. And there, if you'll Google Christina Calhoun, Colchuun, and I'll put some of her work also in the Wakelet, it kind of surfaces some places where harm has been done through the use of some of that big data that seems so desirable and useful, but then can be repurposed in ways that we as a university would not choose. Was that nice, Lee said?
Yes.
Okay. I was trying to be kind. Yeah.
Yes, that was great. So some other unintended consequences is that a lot of people think of first off is the effect on the bookstore. And Veronica, would you like to talk about how you've handled that at SWOSU?
Absolutely. We were actually, our contract with our bookstore is up recently, and we were looking into other options. And one of the things is the bookstore, every time a student buys a book through the bookstore, the institution actually gets a small percentage of that back. So if the institution converts to greater OER, it's actually harming itself because it is losing some important revenue. In addition, if students aren't going to the bookstore, they're less likely to buy the t-shirts and bumper stickers and other related merchandise. So that is a problem. Some of the bookstore providers are being much more proactive about fostering OER, and actually that would enable, even though perhaps there may not be profits for the institution, by fostering OER and perhaps opportunities for faculty to self-publish, that's actually, they're getting something from it, and potentially those additional online sales of t-shirts and things like that that they were potentially losing. So I think it's good to see that some of these providers are actually getting involved in this proactive model and are starting to foster OER. So that's just some of the experiences we've had. Is it's something we had to consider. By improving OER, yeah, our bottom line actually, we'll see a change in this area. So it makes it more important for us to be able to advertise the things we are getting from OER, if in fact we're actually losing money on another end.
Yeah, I think the bookstore can be a great external partner, especially for students who still want something in print. Maybe the bookstore can offer on-demand printing, that kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. I think a lot of the providers have discovered there's a lot of other services they can offer that still generate revenue and are, good services to offer. So.
Right. All right, Jamie, would you like to talk about tracking the true cost benefit of OER?
Sure, although thanks to our bizarre mid-year turnabout, we don't have complete data, and in truth, the data over the years, we hadn't set necessarily on a specific concrete collection method, and so we don't have absolute data. But a few things that we do that we can say for sure, and this is a lot of has to do with Professor Jennifer Neef-C and then Lisa Haldeman, their work with the OpenStax organization and the OpenStax adoptions that were taking place since 2000. I actually did write that down, 2015, 2016. And then just recently, because of eCore, all faculty in political science and the history department use OpenStax. And unfortunately, we don't have full data on that yet because that just happened starting in fall of 19. What I can tell you is that for the 18-19 school year, there were over 500 sections of a course, any particular course being taught at TCC using OER. It impacted almost 11,000 students. And so then using the data from the federal government on the average cost of a college textbook at $79.37, when you do that math, the savings is over 800,000 directly to our students for that year. So that's the only year that we have really solid data. What we do know is now that the strategies used to be the academic strategies, so like College Success 101, they're no longer using the book, so we know that that number will have gone down a little bit, but we don't know how much it came up with the political science history. So if anybody was thinking that I was going to open my mouth and tell you like how to do it, I apologize for disappointing you. We have not yet completely figured out how to do this. The course designation in the catalog will help, of course, so that's definitely a driver for getting that done. But I feel like the more our faculty their interest is, sort of that direction, more of them coming on board, we'll have a more organized knowledge of who's using it. And then, of course, all you have to do then is look at the course counts and you'll be able to see. So a cost I would say that always has to be considered is what's lost when it's not a physical textbook that they can highlight and annotate. And so our team, in addition to supporting faculty, our team has been looking into ways students can still engage with the material, whether or not it's printed. So Hypothesis, the annotation add-on, of course the Pressbooks allows the multiple download formats. That's something that's incredibly intriguing to us. Because what had been happening a little bit is that students would come in to the library and they would print their whole history textbook. And so the student isn't paying for that, but the college is with the printing. So that's a hidden cost that I think institutions do need to consider.
I think we all have a story about a student coming in and printing an entire textbook, and it's too late to stop it. All right, I know there's a lot to be said about tracking the true cost and benefit, and that's another way librarians can provide support at their institution for OER is being in charge of this evaluation method. And I'll post some resources in the Wakelet that I've found that can be helpful for that. But any other comments on that before our last point? All right. So Kathy mentioned this a bit earlier, is that OER are excellent at being inclusive of diverse voices. Just the fact that you can have your students remix a resource and put their voice into it is amazing. Does anyone want to talk about maybe a story that they've seen of OER being inclusive?
I was listening to you, and I can't remember what show it was on NPR because I was driving at the time. But I was listening to, they were talking about science textbooks and how a lot of your commercial science textbooks do not recognize or talk about contributions of women, contributions of people of color, and how they were actually talking about bringing those voices in and bringing those contributions into the classroom, and how your just general ed undergraduate science textbooks, I don't quote me, I'm not really quoting them because I was driving, but I think they said it would take 30 years to get all of them updated to include this broad range of contributions and voices. And I thought, well, just mix it in yourself right now. Like, let's get an OER book going. And so that's one of the things that I've been talking to faculty about is maybe you don't want to throw your textbook out the window. It's working for you, whatever. But really take a look at it to make sure that you're including voices that are often overlooked, and make sure that you get more inclusive material in there. So maybe adopting an open source that way to just supplement, and how that really is just like your ultimate, academic freedom in your classroom, and to bring that in, and to even letting students bring in their own voices. So I was talking to a humanities professor that was talking about her art appreciation course and how it was very Eurocentric, and she had some students in her class that were Native American, and she had them bring in some, they were telling her some of the art that they were familiar with, and some stories that had been passed down through their culture. And so they were including other cultures by having students bring in things and really being open that way. So I think that if we really want to create citizens that are contributing to the broader culture and the broader public good, we got to create these lifelong learners, and it's really hard to just be a sponge. They're not sponges. We don't learn by just being a sponge. We also create, and we have our own perspectives and our own backgrounds that contribute to our learning. And I think that it's important that our OER reflect that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll go ahead and stop our screen share. Casey, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I was actually hoping some of you guys could talk a little bit more about the platforms you've used to create OERs. You've mentioned like things like Pressbook and LibGuides and some others. Can you talk a little bit about how those work and what the benefits are for those?
Well, I'm happy to share a little bit about Pressbooks, and I get a lot of questions when I talk about them because I say it so fast, but it's Pressbooks. It's not a pressed book. It's a platform, a digital publishing platform that's built on a WordPress model, and it's designed to be easily customizable and shareable and editable. And that's what we at Oklahoma State University, the libraries purchased a branded instance of Pressbooks, and that's what we use, make available to our faculty and instructors for their content creation. I have some others though, some faculty that are building their courses, like some of the course flips. They built their courses in Canvas, and they're wonderful courses. And so they've just kind of exported their content, and I'm kind of trying to, with their permission, of course, move their content into Pressbooks. That's a little, I haven't figured out a good, easy, replicable workflow for that. But so we do but we support their content creation wherever they can, and the folks that like got the hacker syllabus, they'll push their Canvas course content into the Canvas Commons, so it is still available. But as much of it as I can grab and put in Pressbooks, just because it's so easy for other people then to use from Pressbooks. We also share it with OER Commons. There's an Oklahoma group that Veronica started, and so we've uploaded our stuff to that. And then we're also excited that the Oklahoma OCO, and someone else can say what that stands for, I think is shortly going to be purchasing an Oklahoma instance of Pressbooks for institutions that are members of that. And I think someone else could speak probably to that better than me.
I'll make sure there's a link to the Cole OCO website in the Wakelet so that you can find out if your institution is a member of OCO, the online Oklahoma Consortium Online or something like that.
I think it's the Online Consortium of Oklahoma.
Thank you, Jamie.
I think.
Yes.
But I could be wrong. There's a lot of acronyms running around.
Yes. But that, yes, the statewide subscription to Pressbooks for people who are part of OCO is going to be a great benefit.
Yeah.
Kathy mentioned OER Commons, and they have an authoring platform, OER Author, that is free to use. Very basic, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, and when we talk about the Pressbooks platform, so like our branded instance, I offer access to Oklahoma faculty and instructors to create content in there, but they're open for the most part for anyone else to use. So our Foundations of Educational Technology resource that's in use for our pre-service teacher ed tech classes, that's open, and anyone at any institution can access it and use it. So it's still free. Use and access of it is free to the community. We just, I guess, more closely curate content creation access.
And, at TCC, our first platform was, actually currently our only platform is LibGuides. Amy could probably speak better to that right now because you have done way more with making the PDFs and making the Kindle export and all that. So I'll let you speak to that if you're cool with it.
Sure. We just used LibGuides because it was there and we'd already paid for it, and we can make it, we can make it work. And we actually looked into getting a Pressbooks for TCC, and it was just way more than we even wanted to ask anybody to spend. So, and especially since we, at the level that we were doing it on, the volume that we were producing, we didn't feel like that was where we needed to go. But I will say that probably our two that are used most, I helped create a Comp2 text for our eCore class, and then our colleague has helped the biology department create a lab manual, and both of those were on our LibGuide. But what we realized when we went completely online, and our students were having trouble with consistent internet access, and to page through a LibGuide, you kind of need internet access. So we quickly modified those to I just put my Comp2 book in Word, created a accessible PDF, and put that through that PDF on the LibGuide. And I also switched it over to a Mobi file so that it could be downloaded to a Kindle. All those things Pressbooks will do for you. But I had time and know-how, so that's the way it happened.
Yeah.
So I guess you just find something that works and just do it.
Do you guys have any particular experience with any faculty who've tried to do a project with a class to create an OER with students?
I'll jump in on that one. We have at ECU a faculty member in photography or mass communication who couldn't find, she was participating in the retention project that I talked about earlier, and she couldn't find any OER that she liked for photography history. And that's pretty common in the more specialized topics. There's not as many OERs available. So I was like, well, you can always make one with your students, and she loved that. and so she's actually been working with Casey. Casey and I did a session for her class to talk about OER and Creative Commons, and then she divided out the textbook outline, and it's divided into semesters. So this is a multi-semester project where they're creating this textbook. I don't know what platform they're using. I told her about OER Author.
They're using OER Author.
Okay. But there is actually an OER textbook, and I will put a link to it in the Wakelet, and it is titled something like Creating Open Textbooks with Students. And it's brief and it's very helpful. I think it's from the British Columbia OER efforts, and they have a lot of good stuff, BC OER, if you want to Google that.
I feel like having a project like that is really, it's really nice as a way to help students learn about the idea of being open and having open content, and helping them learn about like different copyright situations. And then it's also, you could consider it as, I mean, depending on the subject matter, for this history of photography project, we're kind of thinking of it as a digital humanities project. The students are working on and creating this digital humanities object. So if your institution has a digital humanities initiative, you might be able to fold some OER projects into that. I wanted to also ask you guys if you could share with us some common questions that you get from faculty about OER.
It's always about the images. Always about the images. I can just Google this image and throw it in my, no. We get a lot of questions about images, and that's, you know, that's great. It opens up a great conversation to, there are a lot of really high quality, probably better than you're finding in your regular Google search, photographs that are open license that you can use. And once they, I think that's kind of like how we can get them in the door sometimes, and to get them into that conversation of open content is through, they just need an image.
And I've had questions about problem sets. So a statistics professor who wanted to switch to an OER, but he didn't want to create a whole new set of problem sets. And you know, and so how do you wrestle with that? And I said, well, you know, data is not copyrightable, but I think maybe creation of these problem sets that's a creative work, right? Even though it uses publicly available data. And then also the auto grading functions for those large classes. A lot of, I've run into professors that's the reason they're using that commercial textbook, is that commercial homework platform. Then it's auto grading function. And I try to, when I'm presenting to professors, faculty and instructors, I try very much to, you know, tout the benefits of OER, but also our end goal is facilitating a meaningful teaching and learning experience for our students, right? And sometimes the best way to do that is a happy instructor who has time to have dinner with their family, or walk their dog, or watch 30 minutes of TV at night. And if a commercial textbook and the auto grading function is what helps create that kind of instructor, then it is in fact helping create a meaningful teaching and learning environment. So that's one of the ways that we present it, and I try to kind of, as I get on and off my soapbox, try to remember that really a happy teacher and a productive teacher is better for the students than anything. That's what really makes a difference, is the quality of the teaching. And so if they need a $200 textbook with its commercial homework platform, then, you know, I should simmer down a little bit and leave them be.
To piggyback on what Kathy said, I feel like OER isn't always appropriate all the time everywhere. So where it makes sense to replace commercial with OER, every little bit helps students. And so, I mean, if you're talking about the cost issue, of course. So I would never force OER in every situation, because it's not appropriate. So where we can, let's make strides. But the question that I think I get more often than any other is, you know, well, it's free online. Why can't I just copy it and add it to this Word document? And so that whole idea of retention for me is the biggest part of this. Is, you know, you're free to link out to that for 100 years if it's still relevant to your students. But if that copyright owner does not want you linking out to that content anymore, for whatever reason, that's their right as a copyright holder. And so that's the difference. And then, you know, well, how do you know it's copyrighted? Well, unless it says otherwise, it is. And so those are the things that I feel are crucial to the understanding of how all this fits together. And, you know, faculty say, well, is it okay if I just use library articles, database articles? And I'm always quick to say, of course, that's what they're there for. We want you using those. What you need to understand is if we drop that database, or if that database vendor gets in a fight with that publisher and that content is removed or whatever happens, you're not going to have that content anymore. And so be ready to have something in place if one day the link to that from your course doesn't work anymore, so that you can still meet that objective with your student. And that's the value of OER, is you can retain that and you can have it in your pocket for 100 years to keep sharing it with your students if appropriate.
Right, and what a great open pedagogy project to have students write like a review of the article, and then you have that OER available even if access to the article disappears. I have one faculty member who's wanting to use a book that we keep on course reserves, but now that we've transitioned to the HyFlex or the online, you know, obviously they can't come to the library and put their hands on it. It was available for, you know, a hot minute on Red Shelf or whatever it is, but now of course it's gone again. And she's like, well, how do we provide access to that? And I'm like, I think a good option is for you to have students write a review of each chapter of that and their summary of that, and then you have that always, forever, no matter what. But that's another step to take. It's innovative pedagogy. It's also exhausting pedagogy, and it's another new thing to try to incorporate into an already full semester. But there's always an option for how to sustain access to the understanding that is created through interaction with even a closed access resource.
Plus, if you've got an OER, you can adjust it as information is updated. You can't adjust the information in a published article. That's just going to be static. So that's another thing that's really great about OER.
I also want to toss in here, and I think we're at time, but a little bit about licensing. I'm not too, we obviously, we want our stuff released CC BY as much as possible, but out of respect for marginalized voices and against systems of power, we do embrace like the ND designation within resources. So if we have faculty employing open practices and they have some student work that's been created as part of the resource, we do say to the students, you are very welcome to put an ND on that and say you don't want it changed. We don't want to force you into, at this point in your life, giving away this work. And then also being conscious of the fact that, especially as we try to broaden our, the voices that we represent in our work, being attentive to the people whose work that we have historically stolen and repurposed and re-identified, and making sure that we aren't doing that again, that somehow we do service those voices in a way that gives them attribution and compensation and pays what's appropriate to that community. That wasn't well said, that last sentence, but anyway.
Marla, can you go ahead and share how people can access the Wakelet?
Yes. So again, here is our contact information, and these slides will be on the Wakelet, so you can get our contact information there. But part of adopting an open practice is that we want to hear from you. So during the period of the conference from July 29th through the 31st, we will be checking in with this Wakelet and answering your questions or checking out the resources that you share. So here is a link and a QR code. And then once you get to the link, you will click this button, edit the collection, and then you can use these plus signs to put in links, documents, anything, questions, anything that you'd like.
Well, let's leave this up on the screen for people. And I just want to thank everyone who is viewing this video. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, you might want to consider joining the University and College Division of OLA and have more conversations like this with fellow librarians. And don't forget to please fill out a session evaluation for this session. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your conference experience. Visit the Wakelet.